This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today is 2016's Don't Hang Up. And I've never heard of this movie before seeing it on Vudu. But first, a little background. I tend to spend an inordinate amount of time looking through Vudu, Amazon, and Netflix for really good horror. And typically, since it's things I haven't heard of prior, it tends to be either not very good or passable. They're gems every once in a while, but on the whole, the stuff I tend to discover is not what I would think of as great horror. But Don't Hang Up is perhaps one of the better horror films I've seen in a while. It's not a great film, mind you, but it is interesting. It is great looking. It is well done. And what leads me to that conclusion is, first off, how it looks. Many movies don't look very cinematic. Well, I should say, many movies that are done with relatively small budgets don't look cinematic. And that's important because while a bunch of frames assemble together, and if you have enough of them, essentially you can make a movie. That doesn't mean it's going to look and feel like a movie. And Don't Hang Up looks like a movie. It has such a cinematic look to it that it just kind of blew my mind watching it. It looks really good. It's well lit. It feels like a movie. And by comparison, let's take a look at John Carpenter and his 2010 movie, The Ward. Not a bad movie, but it didn't quite look as cinematic as his past efforts, which might have a lot to do with him not working with Dean Cundey on The Ward, who worked on a lot of his past efforts. So it lacked the look of a movie. And I know that's kind of hard to define, but trust me, if you see it, you know what I'm talking about. And so Don't Hang Up looks cinematic. It looks rich. Its colors pop. It looks like a movie. And that can't be underestimated by any stretch of the imagination. The story itself revolves around these three guys who pull pranks on people. They call them and they say that there's someone in your house, don't leave your room and stuff. And they're just mocking these people. But it comes back to bite them in the ass when one of the people who they call comes after them. And it's a real simple premise, but it's such an effective movie. This is not going to be a long review because this movie just works. Check it out. Once again, I assumed this had a theatrical release, but I have never heard of this movie. But it's really well done. If there's one issue with the movie, and it's a small issue, it's that there's a scene about midway in the movie where the antagonist accesses the victim's computers, television set, phone, and all these other things, which is blatantly ridiculous. Now keep in mind, I'm not saying that that's not possible, but the movie doesn't give you any background on the antagonist, so you don't know how he's able to do it, and the likelihood is he would not be able to do it. I mean, if let's say he worked for some major intelligence gathering organization, or he were so, even if that were the case, he still couldn't do it. Reason being, what he was doing, like let's say he set it up so their television and all their computers and their phone would kind of go to him. It's just ludicrous. It's more science fiction-y than anything else. And the rest of the movie tonally isn't like that at all. So it kind of pulled me out of the movie a little bit. But it's a relatively small scene, and the sense of justice you feel for the antagonist is really interesting. This movie reminds me somewhat of The Good Neighbor, which takes a similar premise, but the kids who taunt the innocent person are somehow elevated by the publicity and profit from it in many ways. The Good Neighbor is an interesting movie, by the way. Check it out. Starring James Caan. It's fascinating. But this movie takes the exact opposite tact, in which case people who abuse and prey upon innocent people are giving their comeuppance. And that's what's so interesting about Don't Hang Up. The killer is obviously the antagonist, but his actions are warranted in a very real sense. There are some people in the name of a joke or humor who are willing to ridicule and eventually even destroy people who have done nothing to them. And this movie is a tonic to that. It's really interesting. Check out Don't Hang Up if you haven't seen it. Really good. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Peace. And if you have not subscribed to ScreenFiles.com, please consider doing so. And if you like this video, give it a like. And if you have comments, let me hear them. If you agree or disagree, let me know. Peace.